Welcome to a brand new edition of NFL Power Rankings. It is presented by Energizer. Mike Am and Eric Edholm with you. If you're watching the show, just scan the QR code. You can see a list of all 32 teams and full analysis on why they are ranked where they are. If you're listening, just head to NFL.com. Eric, to me, it's fascinating because I get some messages and people asking, like, how is he coming up with some of these rankings? And this week in your latest article that explains sort of why you have certain teams where you have them slotted, I found it interesting. One-score games is actually a factor for you.
Yeah, it is. The idea being, look, if you're in a lot of close games and you sort of lose more than you normally would win, your overall win percentage, maybe you're a better team than your record indicates. Likewise, if you're winning all in one-score games like the Chiefs, 10-0 this season, perhaps it's indicative that you're overachieving a little bit. So I try to use that to kind of separate what I think is really the cream of the crop, my top 8. Those are the groups, the teams that I think are most prepared to win the Super Bowl right now.
All right, you mentioned the top 8. Let's get to the rankings right now. And the number one team, still the Detroit Lions, and no reason to drop them considering how they're winning some of these ball games. At number 2, it's the Eagles. 9 straight wins and somehow avoided an upset to Carolina. We'll see if that's a red flag for Eric coming up in just a minute. The Chiefs at number 3, a doink and another one-possession win. 6 total touchdowns for Josh Allen and the Bills, but a close loss to the Rams. The Vikings, Darnold, how about he leading this team? 11-2 for the first time since 2009. The Steelers are 6, the Packers at 7, and the Ravens are at number 8. Time for Team of the Week. It's presented by Truist. The team that starts the show is the Detroit Lions, number 1 here. I love how Dan Campbell sometimes roll the dice here, and he'll go for it on 4th down. The fact that they were able to score 2 touchdowns on a 4th down, I absolutely love. To me, Eric, there's a reason why you have them as the number 1 team. They're showing they are.
Absolutely, Mike. And some people would say, hey, they won by a field goal here. They won by a field goal on Thanksgiving. What's the difference? I felt like this was A, better opponent, and B, just a better game. They're decimated on defense. They're hanging in there as best they can on that side of the ball. We know what the offense can do even when the run game isn't flourishing. I mean, they have ways to beat you so many different directions they can go, but also a big night on special teams too. So it really kind of emphasized not only the 3-phase element of this team, so well built from top to bottom, but also that aggressiveness. It cost them once on 4th down, but they were successful 4 times, and that's just the formula for a champion. They're built to withstand one of those misses because the earlier hits really kind of saved them.
On this show last week, I had made reference to the fact that the Eagles scored this huge win against the Baltimore Ravens. I'm hedging, hey, are they better than the Lions, or the Lions better than the Eagles? And this week in the rankings, you have Philadelphia sitting at number 2. Now all of a sudden, they're coming off a win. A little close, though, against the Carolina Panthers squad. Some comments and some chatter about a lack of explosive passes in this team's offense. Is there a red flag? Should we be concerned about what we're seeing on the field, especially early in games?
Yeah, had I known kind of the backstory of the whole A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts tension, if you will, I might not have moved them up a spot this week. They still belong in that top tier in the NFL, I believe, until further notice. Like you said, until recently, we were talking about them as truly one of the elite teams, maybe even better than the Lions in some regards. But yeah, there still is this hurdle they seemingly have to get over every single week, where the first quarter, they've been outscored, I think, something like 59-17. They outscored their opponents by 150 points the last 3 quarters. But for whatever reason, the slow starts have been a problem. A.J. Brown only had 4 targets last week. That's got to get better. Is there a rift there between Hurts and Brown? Are they tight? Can they make this thing work? It does scare you because you know all the drama that existed in that locker room a year ago. But I still think, until proven otherwise, they belong near the top.
Hey, by the way, this defense is balling. For as much as we want to talk about Saquon Barkley, who could be the MVP this year. In fact, he's on the short list, right? One of 3 guys, at least in my mind, that should win that award this season. The Achilles heel last year was they couldn't stop people, especially that secondary. That is flipped in a meaningful way. Eagles, I think you have them right where they should be at the number 2 spot. And I'm ready for some hate from Kansas City fans, who you have number 3. Another one-possession win. I get it. The doink. It happens. When you're a good team, Eric, it feels like no matter what the circumstances are, the ball's always going to go your way.
I would love to just be able to have this kind of luck one day in my life. Yes. I do think there was less luck in this one. I understand the doink field goal, but I felt like the Chiefs at least controlled the script of this game better than they have in the past. Let's say the Panthers game or the Broncos or Raiders games. They made the stop on defense, put it back in Patrick Mahomes' hands. He made some magic. He moved them down the field. They intentionally ran the clock down to take that kick. It's their, backup kicker. So obviously the kick itself got a little scrutiny, but this team knows how to win games. They have a formula. They've been in these situations so many times. That's why they're 10-0 in these situations. And yeah, just for a little extra drama, right? They hadn't really done it to this point in the game, and they finish it off again. I don't know when this runs out. I don't know if this is a sign that they can beat virtually anybody in a schematic battle, or if they're just gonna stop turning over aces every single time they're at the table. It's gonna be fascinating, but last year proved that they can still do pretty well in the playoffs after a lot of close shaves in the regular season.
By the way, we'll talk Chargers here in just a moment. They deserve some flowers as well. More specifically, maybe Justin Herbert, because they're lacking some playmakers and knocking on the door here. I mean, that was an impressive run in the second half from a Los Angeles perspective. By the way, Myles Garrett, this team has been, the Chiefs that is, susceptible to giving up some sacks to Patrick Mahomes. Myles Garrett awaiting them this coming week. The Bills. Awesome game. Shootout. Here we go. Josh Allen trying to cement himself as an MVP. You did drop him a couple spots here. I hate to say it. I almost felt like I thought the Rams were going to win this game. Cross country for Buffalo. Bills Mafia. I came into the studio super early on Sunday morning for our pregame show. You saw some of Bills Mafia already showing up. It's a good win for the Rams. How much concern do you have about this Buffalo team to lose a shootout on the road like this?
Yeah, I suppose there's a certain irony about an MVP candidate and Allen helping his cause in a loss more than he maybe has in a lot of wins this year. But, the Buffalo defense did concern me. Allen was great. He did everything possible, to dig them out of that hole. Obviously, his receivers did a lot of work after the catch, too. Got to give them credit. But Allen, as a runner and as a passer, was absolutely tremendous. And look, nobody's denying it. He's going to be the reason whether they win a Super Bowl or don't win a Super Bowl this year. Such an important piece of what they do and such a tough piece to stop. That said, if the defense isn't doing its job, we've got problems. And more often than not, they've done their job this year. But a precision passer, 15 or 11 of 15 on third downs. I mean, Matthew Stafford was carving them up, and that is a concern for me. But this, like you said, I think this game probably meant more to the Rams than it did to the Bills. And so, 2 spots seems like a lot. I still have them near the top, and I think they can even be a number 1 team by the end of the regular season.
Only thing, and I'd love to get your take very quickly on this, the Bills on the road. People are talking about, hey, do they need home field advantage in the postseason? I would contend that they do, even though some others might say no. At Houston, at Baltimore, at the Rams, they're losing some road games against good teams. We'll get a good test against, obviously, the Lions because that's a road game this coming week. But I think there's some pressure here on Josh Allen and this team to try to do their best here. And it's a little out of their hands because of Kansas City's run. But I think Buffalo needs home field.
Yeah, right. Obviously, it does hurt them, the loss from that standpoint. And Kansas City does have that big lead at this point, even with the Buffalo win in the head-to-head game. So got to keep trying. Got to see if you can steal it from them down the stretch.
Yeah, I love that you have the Vikings at number 5. Are they the team that we talk the least amount that we should be talking way more about?
Their record suggests so, doesn't it? I mean, look, 11-2, you can't really argue with what they've done on the field, kind of like we were talking about with the Chiefs, or maybe it's memories of 2 years ago, the 2022 Vikings, who went 13-4, but had a negative point differential. I think this team has been more impressive in how it's won games. Yes, there have been some close ones. Chicago a few weeks back obviously got a little bit lucky there. Some other games, too, that got away from them earlier in this season, like the Lions game. But still, the way Sam Darnold is playing now, I think the narrative has changed on him. It's no longer, can they win with him? Is this guy even a dark horse MVP candidate at this point? Top 5 in passing yards, passing touchdowns, has really been on a heater lately, done the job. Few hiccups early in the season, but I don't have as many doubts now. And boy, do the Vikings just let him walk in the offseason? I guess that's a discussion for down the road, but he's playing at a super high level, and that Vikings defense did enough against Kirk Cousins, old friend there in Minnesota, to get the win.
6 straight wins for this team after suffering back-to-back losses where we started to doubt and say, hey, yeah, this is the team that we expected. Well, guess what? They continue to win some of these games. Darnold 5 passing touchdowns in the win against Atlanta. And you start thinking, didn't they draft a quarterback in J.J. McCarthy? You're right. There's going to be some interesting decisions that organization is going to have to make with regard to him. Vikings, certainly a team worthy of conversation. Steelers also in the mix. Style of play from Mike Tomlin's squad, Eric, does that make them arguably the most dangerous team in the AFC because of how they play?
Yeah, I keep getting these questions. I go on radio shows, Mike, and people say, are the Steelers a legit Super Bowl contender? And I feel like it's a bit of an odd question. And my answer is always, why the heck not, right? I mean, they've got an outstanding defense. A couple of Defensive Player of the Year award candidates in T.J. Watt and Cameron Hayward, who's having an amazing season, almost 36 years old. So, what they do on that side of the ball, they're going to take care of business more often than not. The offense has shown signs that they can cook on their best days, maybe a little hot and cold at times. Special teams have been outstanding. Chris Boswell and the rest of that unit has been terrific this season. So another kind of 3-phase operation that I think makes it tough on people. Yeah, they lost at home to Dallas. Yes, they've had other hiccups this season that maybe, cast some negative light on them. But I also feel like, they could beat the Ravens head to head. They could beat some tough teams. They could take away some of your best weapons. So, we saw it again on Sunday, and, they're cooking.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want to match up against them. They remind me a little bit of the Chargers because of what they do defensively, but they got better pieces on the offensive side right now than Justin Herbert is working with on that roster. But speaking of the Chargers, we just took you through those Tier 1 teams, the Chargers, the Rams, the Bucs, the Seahawks, all come to mind as Tier 2 squads. What about their postseason hopes and what they can do once they get to the playoffs? The answer is coming up next on Power Rankings. Back here on Power Rankings, Mike Yam and Eric Edholm with you. Teams 9 through 16. The Chargers sitting in the 9th spot, almost a win in Kansas City. Teams coming off of a bye. Broncos, Commanders, and Texans. They're 10, 11, and 12. At 13, it's the Seahawks. They're 4-0 since their bye. How about the Buccaneers at 14? A win and first place in the NFC South. The Rams scored that important win at home against the Bills. And at 16, the Cardinals now spiraling out of control. Let's focus in on this Chargers team at number 9. I kind of wanted to, it's not that I was rooting for or against the team, but there's a part of me that wanted them to win to show people like, hey, we can score a win against a winning ball club. It was going to be a tough task. A lot of injury concerns, especially at the playmaker spot. We didn't see Ladd McConkey out there. That obviously was an issue. Will Disley gets banged up in that game. I'm still giving them some respect for an almost win against the Chiefs.
Absolutely. You fall behind against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. I don't care what kind of season they're having or how many close games they're playing. That's a tough environment to deal with. They lost a close one earlier in the season to the Chiefs. They know how that one played out, but they really got things going after a certain point, especially without a major run game early. I mean, they found ways to move the ball down the field. In fact, Quentin Johnston had a really nice game. We've seen some inconsistencies from him, but Joshua Palmer stepping up. Stone Smart, how about him? He looked like a pretty good-looking tight end there after some injuries at the position. So again, I mean, they've been hurt by losing guys offensively, defensively, giving up big pass plays, but they held tight in this game and were just a few plays short. And like you said, they still need that kind of big signature win to sort of prove they belong in that upper tier. That's why they sit just outside of my top 8 right now.
11 consecutive games now for Justin Herbert without the interception. To me, certainly one of the more impressive quarterbacks. And once again, I just look around that field when I see them playing. I go, where's the playmaker here? Like, who's the difference maker on this team's offense? And they don't have it just yet. I say that to say good things are to come here for Harbaugh's squad over the next couple seasons or so. Time for Future Champions presented by FanDuel. Closer look at the teams favored to go and win the NFC West. The Seahawks, not a surprise here, sitting at the top. The Rams just behind them. The Cardinals, I don't know what's going on with this squad. And the San Francisco 49ers, not sticking a fork in them just yet, coming off of a dominant win against the Bears. All right, at number 13, it is the Seahawks. They're winning games. I think I started to doubt them a little bit. I know they came off to a fast start, then they started to lose. It's like a team of streaks and runs. But because of what the division is right now, Eric, can't you just make the claim like they're the team to beat at this point?
They're in the pole position right now. The Rams will obviously have something to say about it. Maybe the 49ers or Cardinals can kind of rediscover their previous form. 49ers look pretty good Sunday, but still, I mean, right now, the way things are lined up, they're in a terrific position to claim this division in Mike McDonald's first year, which, after the 3-0 start, okay, made some sense. But after they lost that slew of games there and really put themselves behind the 8 ball, you weren't too sure. Sunday, no Kenneth Walker. Zach Charbonnet steps up in a big way. Geno Smith's, interceptions were getting out of control at one point. He's now had a couple games where he's really taken care of the ball. The defense has done its job. So this has been a total team effort, Mike, and I really like what I'm seeing. More of kind of what we saw earlier in the season against an easier schedule, I should say, and less with the struggles that they really endured through the kind of the second quarter of the season, if you will.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's a prove it week, but I think I'd have less doubts if they could win on Sunday Night Football against Green Bay. I don't. Yeah. There's something in my mind that says, "Hey, is this totally believable right now with the Seahawks?"
Still holding you back, yeah.
Yeah, I maybe it's just the state of the division, to be honest with you, because it hasn't been. It just hasn't been fun to watch at times. We'll talk about the Rams in just a moment, but at 14, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't look now. It doesn't matter if there's injuries. It doesn't matter if there's losses. They figure out a way to try to get that pole position, as you just described, in that division. I look at the rest of the teams that are there, and I say this is theirs to take right now because of Baker Mayfield, and maybe they're getting a little bit healthier.
Yeah, and because of what Atlanta's doing too, we can't ignore that fact. They were 6-3 with a season sweep over the Bucs. It looked like Atlanta's division. Tampa has come in and kind of claimed this thing a little bit. And, Baker Mayfield, you do have to kind of ride the ups and downs a little bit. Had two kind of strange interceptions, one right in front of his face. And, it sort of put them in a little bit of a tough spot. But this was the Raiders. They did take care of business. They did find a groove. Jalen McMillan scored twice, his first touchdown since week 1. So that was a pretty good sign, and they put him away late. So, kind of like what you were saying a little bit with the Seahawks, there's something that just sort of holds me back, but there is a really good competitive spirit. And now they have their Hall of Fame receiver back, Mike Evans, Mayfield. They've got a chance. They really do. And they're looking good for a home playoff game as the NFC South potential division champs at this point.
I like that phrase, competitive spirit, because I'm trying to figure out why I'm still kind of on the bandwagon, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Because even when it's Godwin and Evans that goes down, Baker's, and I know they lost some of those games, but they're staying in it. There is something about that Baker effect that has me believing just this much, that when or if they get to the postseason, they can potentially come up with knocking out one of these other squads. The Rams, I've been high on this team for most of the season coming into the year. I thought they had as good of a chance to win the division as any. Injury issues, massive injury issues for the first half of the season. They're hanging tough here. Big win against Buffalo. Does that win change your perception about them being the team to beat in the West?
Yeah, certainly does a little bit, right? If you could have that explosive a game, probably one of the best offensive performances in the Sean McVay era, right? If you consider the opponent, the circumstances, the gotta-have-it nature. But they have their guys back. I mean, Puka Nacua looks like he did last year when he dominated as a rookie. Cooper Kupp looks like sort of the pre-injury version form of him, a great counterpiece. Kyron Williams running the football. And yeah, Matthew Stafford, he's pretty good too, right? The third down conversion rate was unbelievable on Sunday, really diced that defense, took some risks on fourth down too. Had to make up for their own defense too, though, Mike. I mean, if we're going to talk about Buffalo giving up yards, we certainly got to do the same for the Rams. And that young D-line is up against it. But they put in a lot of energy up front to try to make people work for their points.
I knew Puka was having a big game, but check this out. First player in NFL history with at least 12 receptions, 150 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown, and 1 rushing touchdown. The guy is bonkers out on the football field. I want to see him in the postseason just because I want to see what he can do against some of the best defenses in the NFL. Meanwhile, the Niners, they win. Cincinnati, they win too. Are we saying there's still a chance? The answer is next on Power Rankings. Back here on Power Rankings, teams 17 through 24, the Niners. I don't know how to explain it. They're sitting at 17 and they get a big win over the Bears. They were dominant in that game. The Colts at 18. The Dolphins a thriller over the Jets in the 19th position at 20. What is going on with the Atlanta Falcons? The Bengals at 21. Nice win for them on Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys, who are 22. Derek Carr fractured non-throwing hand. That's a problem for the Saints, who are 23, and the Bears at 24. Time for Power Moves presented by Energizer. So the Niners are up 3 spots. Should I say there's a chance for them, Eric, in the postseason? The division, it feels like it's still kind of open.
Yeah, the mathematicians in the back room are telling me there is a chance, there is a path. I haven't yet found out how that's going to work, but if they play like they did on Sunday, especially in the first half against the Bears, they can beat almost anybody down the stretch. So we'll see. I mean, it was the best half of football I think they've had on both sides of the ball combined in the first half. It eased off a little in the second half, but totally dominant performance. And it's just sort of a reminder, a disappointment of like, this is the team we expected this year, Mike. We just haven't seen enough of this group, even as banged up as they are.
Yeah, real buzzkill to watch the way the season was unfolded. And once again, a lot of it because of injuries. Speaking of injuries, I think the Dolphins this would be a much different conversation had Tua been healthy the entire season. He's balling right now, and they sunk the Jets' chances of making it to the postseason and officially eliminated them. This is a tough game against the Houston Texans. I think important for both of these teams.
I agree. Yeah, I was not all that impressed with the Dolphins, at least early on. I feel like they didn't show much energy against the Jets, and I understand it's a team that's having a bad season, but it took them a while to get going. They were just sort of keeping pace with them before finally pulling ahead in overtime there. Jonnu Smith, no catches in regulation, and then becomes an overtime hero. But they got it done. They have the firepower. On certain days their defense can be great, but you're right. This next game obviously probably means more for Houston given where they're at. But, it's existential for Miami. They lose, they're pretty much done. And even as things stand, they're not looking great as far as the playoffs go right now. So need a lot of work to get done.
They really need this game against Houston. And by the way, the Texans, I have some serious questions. I don't want to say it's gettable, but the Dolphins have an opportunity to win this football game. The Falcons, please explain to me what the heck is going on right now for Raheem Morris' squad. It's 4 straight losses. And I'm thinking to myself, you drafted Michael Penix. At this point, maybe we kind of have to go to him.
Yeah, and I can understand not making that move prior to last week. Kirk Cousins has returned to Minnesota. It's a good veteran defense. You don't want to necessarily throw Penix in that spot and also deny Cousins that opportunity. And early on, there were some decent connections, some drives that looked like they were pretty promising, but the 2 interceptions, now a 4-game total, 0 touchdowns, 8 picks. You can't have this kind of performance on offense and expect to keep your job. Penix waiting in the wings. Do they make that call? Ugh, I don't know. I think they're getting desperate and they might have to. They're below 50% to make the playoffs right now. It might be the time.
And they were in the driver's seat in this division. And I think that's why there's some pressure right now, because it's not like the Bucs are, the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Like, there's still an opportunity here, especially with some of these head-to-heads. Cincinnati, they win all their games the rest of the season. That puts them at 9. That's not enough, right?
I don't think so. Yeah, obviously it was a dramatic win. They finally got it done on Monday night in crazy fashion. I think that block punt recovery was probably the luckiest play they've had all season in a year of bad turns. But it's going to take a lot more, and I think they've kind of made their own bed this season with all the close losses and everything else that kind of fell apart. They're a talented team. They just haven't had it show enough this season, and it's going to cost them.
It is in a big way as we look at the rest of the teams in the NFL. At 25, it is the Browns. 26, we keep loving up Bryce Young, and I get it. The Jets officially eliminated at 27, and then the rest of the way, it's the Patriots, the Jags, the Titans, the Raiders, and the New York Giants sitting at 32. My G-men. You gotta be kidding me here. Yeah, it's been that type of season for them. By the way, not to throw shade on another team in the tri-state area in New York City, but the Jets, considering the expectation level being eliminated, kind of a buzzkill. Like, there's some real questions heading into the offseason for this team.
Such as who's going to be the coach, who's going to be the quarterback, what else are the big changes going to be? You heard Garrett Wilson really kind of, uncork the frustration, if you will, after the game and just say, if you haven't watched us, since preseason, would you think this was a surprise the way this game went? It's been the same way almost every single week. Self-inflicted mistakes left and right. Can't do and expect to win games. He understands that.
God, imagine what this was supposed to be 2 years ago. Doesn't work out like that all the time. Eric, you're the best man. Always appreciate everyone watching and listening to NFL Power Rankings.